Once upon a time, there was a very beautiful girl named Adaego, but many people called her Ego. She was the most beautiful girl in the village. One day, Adaego went to the bush to pluck some herbs and she heard a flute in the distance. She heard a flute playing. "Who is it?" she called out, but no one responded. So she began to follow the sound of the flute. Before she could reach the sound, the flute stopped, and this made her very sad because she was very excited to meet whoever was playing the flute. When Adaego got home that day, all she could think was the sound of the flute. She even dreamed that she was dancing to the sound in her dream. When she woke up in the morning, she set out on an adventure to find the flutist. She got to the bush but found no one there. So she decided to sit down by the bush to see if the person would play the flute again. As she was waiting, she heard the flute sound again. She called out but no one answered. So she began to follow the sound of the flute until she got to a small hut by the bush. There she saw a young man playing the flute for his little sister. His name was Ikenna and he was deaf. Ikenna could not hear the flute himself, but he loved to play it for his sister, Monachi. Even though they were poor orphans who lived alone in the village and had no friends, Monachi quickly asked Adaego how they could help her. Adaego told Monachi that she followed the sound of the flute because she wanted to know who played the beautiful sound. Monachi then told Ikenna what Adaego said, and Ikenna brought a chair for Adaego to sit down. Ikenna began to play the flute again, and Adaego did not know when she started singing at the top of her voice. Ikenna and Adaego secretly fall in love with each other at that moment. Even though Ikenna could not hear a single sound, he could feel the music in the air, and this made him very happy. Adaego was singing when she remembered it was getting late, so she told Monachi to tell her brother that she would be back tomorrow. She waved at them and ran home. Adaego lived with her mother and her little brother, Chinedu. Their father had died many years ago, and their mother had been the one always looking after them. As the most beautiful girl in the village, many people loved and admired Adaego. Whenever she went to the market square to buy food items, people would stop to admire her beauty, especially the young men in the village who all wanted to marry her. Even the most handsome man in the village, Ezenwa, had always had his eyes on Adaego. People always talked about what beautiful kids they would make if they got married. Ezenwa had come several times to Adego's house to ask for her hand in marriage, but Adaego had still not accepted. Even her uncles had pleaded with her to accept his proposal, but Adaego had still not agreed to marry Ezenwa. Adaego had always wanted to marry someone that she truly loved, and Ezenwa was not that man. Adaego continued to visit Ikenna and his sister, and they grew closer each day. Ikenna and Adaego loved each other so deeply, and they decided to get married. Ikenna and his only uncle visited Adego's family to declare his interest in marrying Adaego. Her uncles were disappointed in Adego's choice of husband when they found out that Ikenna was not only poor but also deaf. They wanted Ikenna to stay away from Adaego, and Ikenna stood up and left the scene angrily. Adaego was distraught and she ran into her room and began to cry. "Mama, what did I do to these people? Let them allow me to marry the man I want to marry," she cried. Ikenna, when he got home, he thought to himself, what did I do to deserve this kind of life? Tears rolled down his eyes and he grabbed his flute and began to play from his heart. While he was playing, the king of the village passed by and heard the flute sound. He asked two of his guards to go fetch whoever was playing the flute. They got to Ikenna's house and carried him to see the king. Monachi was home crying because she thought her brother was in a lot of trouble. What do the palace guards want with my brother? She asked herself as she continued to cry. Ikenna was confused as he did not know why the king needed to see him. After all, he was deaf and always kept to himself. Why would the king require my presence? He thought to himself. Next thing he knew, everyone rose to welcome the king. The king asked, "Young man, what is your name?" One of the palace guard answered, "My lord, his name is Ikenna, late Mazi Chinwendo's son. He is deaf and lives alone with his little sister." "I see," said the king. He sent for the interpreter, tell the young man that I was passing by his house and heard him blowing the flute. The melody touched my heart and I am moved to help him. I want him to be by my side always, playing his flute for me. I will give him wealth and any of his heart desires. When the interpreter told Ikenna this, he fell to his feet and began to cry. Is this how life want to smile on poor old me? He thought to himself after just being rejected. The king had accepted him. The king went on to say, ask the young man to make a wish and I will grant it with my mantle authority. When the interpreter told Ikenna this, he wished the king will grant his request to marry Adaego. When the interpreter told the king this, the king raised up his mantle and said, your wish has been granted, my son. Then the king sent for Adaego and her family and they performed the marriage ceremony the next day. Adaego and Ikenna lived in the palace happily. They were now rich and the envy of the whole village. The lesson in this story is no matter your situation, never give up, always follow your heart.